Okay, so hello everyone. This is going to be a very different video than usual because this is not going to be any sort of travel video. Now today I want to talk about renewing the driver's license in Japan, which is something I actually did just this morning, so thought now is a very good time to do a video while it's still fresh in my mind. So some of the things which I want to discuss today is sort of how do we start the process of renewing the driver's license, what are some of the documents we need to bring along, where do we go to do it, and what's the overall procedure to get it done. Okay, so first of all, if you have a driver's license in Japan, you will receive one of these notifications about 2 months before the license is due. And this is sort of the notice that renewal is required. Now obviously I blanked out some of the sensitive information, but generally the information is as follows. So firstly, we got the renewal period. So this is generally giving you an idea of when can you start the process and when do you have to finish it by, which is generally about 2 months before the expiration date. Below that, we have a list of possible locations that you can renew your license. So you can see in this particular case, there is a circle underneath testing facility. And there's only 3 of those in Tokyo, which I'll talk about. One thing which I did not mention earlier is that I live in Tokyo, and so these procedures would probably be specific to Tokyo itself, but I'm guessing that other regions in Japan will also have something quite similar. Below that, we have the lecture type classification. So this time round, this is my first renewal, which is why it's shown in kanji here, shokai, which means the first time. And so this determines what sort of class I need to attend during the renewal process. So you follow the arrow to the right hand side of the page, you can see the description of the class. So for first timers, it's 2 hours long, and the registration period is from 8:30 in the morning to 2 p.m. in the afternoon on weekdays. On weekends, the time is slightly different. Now, you can see other columns as well, and that sort of depends on what your lecture classification is like. Now, it's important to note here that the last time you see, which is 2 p.m. on weekdays, is the time that you must complete the registration by. It is not the time to start the registration process, so you generally have to be there quite a lot earlier. I'll say to be safe, at least 1 hour, if not 2 or more, because it can be quite crowded on certain days. So as mentioned before, we have 3 main testing centers in Japan. We have Fuchu on the west side, Samezu on the south side, and Koto on the east side. Now, depending on what type of class you're doing, you could potentially do other types as well. However, for the beginner classes, you have to do one of these 3 spots. For me personally, I chose the Koto Driver's License Center because it's the closest to where I live. So what do we need to bring to the Driver's License Center? So the first one is the renewal notice, which is the form I showed you earlier. The second one is your current driver's license. The third one is the payment fee, which if you look at the card that I showed before was about 3,850 in my case. This can differ depending on what class you need to take. Fourth one is a black ballpoint pen. Now I'm not too sure whether this is really needed, is what was listed in the renewal notice. And the final one is an identification of some kind. Now obviously, because this is a driver's license renewal, we can't use our driver's license as identification. For us foreigners, residence cards are probably the way to go. If not, at least a passport. Now this here is my very poor artistic rendition of how the Koto first floor is like. Now obviously, if you're going to Fuchu or Samezu, the layout will be quite different, the process could be slightly different, but I think overall, the flow of the application will be quite similar. So if you're renewing your license, the first thing you want to do is to turn right at the entrance and join the queue there to reach the reception. Now, just before the reception, there are some machines there where you need to input 2 PIN codes, and these are required in order to validate your new driver's license later on using another machine. Make sure you don't lose the slip because you do need the barcode for other processes along the line as well. Now once you reach reception, they'll give you a form that on the back has a questionnaire saying, you know, have you lost consciousness when you're driving recently, have you lost control of your body, so on and so forth. On the front side of it, you need to fill out your name, your address and all that. Now don't lose the sheet either because you need parts of the sheet all the way through the process. Now when you finish your reception, you walk past some places that you can fill out these forms. So this is one of the reasons why I don't really think you need a black pen, because there are plenty of black pens available there. However, what some people like to do is they like to just continue straight on to the next line in order to save time rather than stopping and filling out forms when you can do it while waiting in line. Now, when you're at reception, they'll tell you to fill out the form and then go to Q0, which is this part here, where you need to make your payment. So there are two different types of lines. One of them is cash only. The other ones you can use credit cards, cashless payment, IC cards, and that sort of thing as well. Now, I personally thought that the cashless approach would have been quicker, but actually the cash only approach was much faster. I'm pretty sure there was twice as many people going through that compared to the other two lines. And the main reason for that is, even though you're paying by credit cards and all that, they still need to sort of input some commands into a separate machine in order to allow you to do that. Perhaps cash, just throw them the money, they just give you the change and you're off. So once you make your payments, you need to go to queue number 7 for your eye check. So for those of you who have done eye checks before, this would be quite familiar for you. For those of you who haven't, the way that is done in Japan is shown on the right here, where basically we got C's that's sort of orientated in different ways, and we just need to tell them which direction the hole is. So you'll see lots of different C's on there, different sizes as well, and they're all grayed out apart from one which is lit up. For that particular one, you need to tell the staff where the hole is located, so whether it's left, up, down, or right. Now, you need some Japanese for this part, but if you're here long enough in order for your license to expire, which is 3 years, you should really have a very good idea how to say directions by now. So, ue, shita, hidari, migi. So once you're done with that, comes the part which I felt is the most useless. So this is stop number 8, where they basically just check to see what your eye condition is like. So for example, if you wore your glasses during your eye check, they just put a note on the form saying that you must have glasses at all times. To me, it's a very redundant step. I don't see the point of it if you already have it done at the eye check. But nonetheless, that's stop number 8. Now at stop number 8, they told me to go to stop number 9, but I don't really know if there's a difference between 9 and 10. So I'm just going to describe what happened at number 9. So when we go through at number 9, firstly they punch a hole through my past driver's license, which means I can't use it anymore. And then they validated my address and details with my residence card. And then after that, they sort of take off half of the form and sort of just gave me the remainder slip, which is needed for the rest of the process. So I'm not entirely sure what exactly this part is. I think it's just confirming details, which I thought has already been done in reception. So once again, I'm not too sure whether there's really a need for the step, but nonetheless, we did it. So once we go to photos, we need to scan the barcode in the form that we have at the very beginning with the pin codes and all that. I believe what this does is that it assigns the photo that we'll take to this to the system, so that it'll know which applicant has which photo and so on. Now, when we get to the photos, there wasn't really much time to prepare. It's basically, scan it, sit down, take your photo, and get the hell out. There's no mirrors or anything. If you want to make sure you look good, bring your own mirror, have a quick wipe your hair, whatever. So after photos are done, we were told to go out the escalator to the second floor. And once we reach the second floor, we go forward to register for our class. So if you remember from the very beginning, I said that there was a time limit on when you must get this done by. So it's not when you start the process, you must finish this stage by 2 o'clock on weekdays. And when I was done with this registration, which is very simple, they basically just look at what class you need to attend, assign you a class number, and tell you to go do it. So mine was class 6, which was located at the very far end of the hall. Now I'm not too sure how the rest of the floor is laid out. The only parts I visited was the registration desk and classroom 6. So this is a photo of classroom 6 itself. So when you're within here and when the class is ongoing, you should not be using your cell phones, you shouldn't be eating or drinking, that sort of stuff. The class itself, you can see it was quite full. This is Corona time, so the seats in the middle cannot be occupied. So overall, I'll say the class was at 67% occupancy. These are the textbooks that they give everyone for free. It basically just describes like the type of accidents that has been common in recent times, what some of the road signs mean, some of the good driving habits, some of the stickers that people put on cars for, you know, new drivers, people with disability, that sort of things. Useful information to know, but you know, if you're not as familiar with Japanese, you probably won't pick up as much of it during class itself. That's okay. It's not actually a prerequisite to actually understand what's going on. The main thing is just to attend the class. Now, during the class itself, they actually gave out sort of a self-evaluation sheet, as you can see on here. Now, quite a lot of people freak out at this stage because they thought this could potentially be a test. It's not. It's basically just to see what your driving habits are and whether there's an indication of whether you need to have a think about how to improve your driving. So on the left, for example, in the first one, it sort of says, you know, when you're driving, do you tend to eat or drink? Which I put no. When you flip over to the back, what you'll notice is that the answers are generally the opposite of what you might expect. And that's because correct here, at the back anyway, does not mean that your answer is correct. What it means is that that is a habit that you should not necessarily be doing. So it's kind of like the reverse of the correct answer. I don't know whether I really explained that very well. So ideally, you want to get as many of these wrong as possible because it means you're a better driver. Don't worry if you don't understand this, or if you end up getting basically matching answers with the final answer, which basically means you're a crap driver, you really should be driving. This thing does not impact whether you get your license at all. It's basically just a self-evaluation test, so do not worry about this particular stage. You can actually bring it home and do it in your own time. Now, in addition to this and the two booklets, there was also a 20-minute DVD that was played, basically showing sort of how some people could potentially get into accidents by not paying attention to the road, or some things to look out for because sometimes things are not within your control, such as people just zooming out from blind corners and that sort of thing. But as I mentioned, don't worry about not being able to fully understand everything. The main thing is just to be there for that 2 hours just to get attendance. Once the instructor feels that, you know, you've done enough, they'll just walk through just to stamp your slip and all that. So like I said, don't worry too much, don't panic too much. Half the class when I was there was sleeping, and he still stamped those people's slips anyway, so don't worry about it. The main thing is just to be there for the 2 hours. So once we were done with that, we just took the escalator up to the 4th floor, where we lined up to obtain our license from the license distribution desk at the very far end of the room. Now, one of the funny things is, this being Japan, there is actually a souvenir shop for like plushies and things, like Rilakkuma and the police plushie. That's a weird thing. There's also a decent looking cafeteria there as well, but I didn't stop by for any food. So once you go to the license distribution desk, they'll just make sure that the slip has been stamped, indicating that you have attended lecture, and they'll just give you the license from there. Once you do that, you need to go to one of the machines on the far wall here, and just put your card into the machine, input the 2 PIN numbers, wait for it to validate the card, and once it's done, you can pick up the card and you're off home. It's quite a long, convoluted process, but it's not that scary when you're actually doing it. I'd say overall, I went at about 8:20 in the morning. This is about 10 minutes before we started, because I was hoping to avoid as many people as possible due to it being Corona. Unfortunately, it seems everyone had the same idea, so I'll say that there was at least 70 people ahead of me in the queue. But even with that, I basically finished this whole process in about 3 hours, so it wasn't too bad overall. So anyway, I hope this gives everyone a very good idea of the process required to renew your license. Now, unfortunately, I can't give any advice on how to obtain your license, because it's been about 2.5 years since I did it, and I had an easy route to do it as well because of the country which I came from. Now, as I mentioned before, this detailed steps of how I went through the process is specific for the Koto driver's license testing center. Other testing centers in Tokyo could have quite different layouts, but I presume that the overall process is still the same. I can't speak for how the process outside of Tokyo is like, but once again, I do believe it should be somewhat similar to this. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening to me and for watching this video. Hope you all have a very good day. See you in the future.